Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to be looking at interpreting bar graphs and pictographs. Interpreting is just a fancy word of saying you're going to look at the data and answer questions on it. The first thing that we're going to focus on is interpreting bar graphs. As you can see, this is a bar graph. A bar graph is a type of graph that compares different amounts using bars. There are certain things that each bar graph should include. The first thing being a title. The title tells you about what the bar graph is about. You should also have some bar labels. Those are going to be the ones underneath of the bar that tell you what was surveyed or the data that was collected for the graph. So in this instance, it's fall, winter, summer, and spring, which matches our title, seasons of the year. You should also have an axis label included. That is the thing that tells you what the numbers represent on the side of your graph and what the bars are labeled as. So for this bar, it's the number of students. Finally, it should include some type of scale. So looking at the scale on this graph, it's really what the graph is skip counting by. So each line for this graph represents one student because each line goes up one number at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If it had a scale of 2, it would skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on. It could also have a scale of 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So you just have to really pay attention to what the scale is in each of your graph. Now we're going to take a look at interpreting data. Before I even look at questions, I need to see what my graph is about. So I'm going to take a look at the title. So my title is number of runs. And the baseball kind of also gives it away that it's about home runs. The next thing I'm going to look about is my bar labels. So this says players' names. So I have Mark, Tracy, Doug, Patty, and Sarah. Now I'm going to look at what my axis label is, number of runs. So these numbers represent the number of runs that each of these players got. And finally, I'm going to look at the scale. This scale is different than the last graph because it goes from 0 to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That means that each bar is skip counting by 2. So anytime it goes to another line, that's 2 more runs. But what happens when we get to one that is in between a bar? Well, if I'm looking at this means it's a number between a 10 and a 12. There is only one number between 10 and 12, which is 11. So that means Doug had 11 runs. Now I'm ready to answer my questions. So my first question says, how many runs did Patty and Sarah get combined? So I have to take a look and see about Patty and Sarah. So here's Patty right here. Her bar goes up to the second line, and when I come over here, it's at the 4. So Patty scored 4 runs. And here's Sarah. Sarah goes in between the numbers of 6 and 8. So the number that is between 6 and 8 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Sarah scored 7 runs. Now it says that how many runs did Patty and Sarah get combined? I know that when I'm looking at a combined number, I'm going to add those numbers together. So in order to figure out how many runs they had combined, I'm going to add Sarah's 7 and Patty's 4. That gives me 11 runs combined. I also want to make sure that I include the unit, 11 runs, because I'm not talking about 11 bats, 11 balls, or 11 gloves. It specifically asks for how many runs. So 11 runs combined. The next question, how many more runs did Tracy get than Mark? Well, I definitely want to take a look at Tracy, and I definitely want to take a look at Mark. So Mark is first, so I'm going to look at his. Mark scored up to the line of 8. So Mark scored 8 runs. And here's Tracy right next door. Tracy got up to the 12th one. So I know Mark had 8, Tracy had 12. This one says, how many more runs did Tracy get than Mark? So the important part of this is how many more. How many more is asking for the difference. What is the difference between Tracy and Mark? In order to find a difference, I know that I'm going to have to subtract. So when I do 12 minus 8, I get 4. And I'm going to make sure that I include the unit 4 runs. Now it's your turn to practice. So take a look at the title, take a look at the labels, and see if you can answer this question. How many more children like cats than hamsters? Hopefully you chose 4 children. If you didn't, the way that you would get this is it says how many more. So I know if it's how many more, I'm going to be finding the difference. And I have to find it between cats and hamsters. So if I'm looking at cats, cats has 10, hamsters has 6. The difference between those two, 10 and 6, so 10 minus 6 would give you 4. All right, let's do another question. How many children were surveyed? So, in order to get this, that means you have to add up all of the data from it because you're looking at the surveyed people or how many people actually said their favorite pet. So, you would have to add up all of the cats, all of the dogs, and all of the hamsters to find this answer. Hopefully, you found out that 20 children were surveyed. If there were 10 cats and dogs were 4 and hamsters were 6, you simply add them all together. 6 plus 4 is a 10 combination, so I know that these two together equal 10. And then cats have 10, so 10 plus 10 gives you 20.